we're in the parsha of buying Arba Minim. So when buying Arba Minim, you get a lot of shilohs. The most important one is, how much am I supposed to spend on this? It doesn't compute naturally. Like, it's kosher, it's 100 shekel, it's olive, 150 shekel, olive, 200. Like, what are you supposed to do? So there's a halacha about this. In fact, there's two halachas about it. I just want to explain them very briefly. There's general din of Zeh Keli V'anveihu. So when it comes to Zeh Keli V'anveihu, what that means is that when you do a mitzvah, do it as nicely as possible. Don't do it just schleppy. If you're going to make an Arn Kodesh, make a nice Arn Kodesh. If you're going to buy Shabbos candlesticks, buy nice Shabbos candlesticks. Not that you're not Yotzei without it. Do a Chanukah menorah, make a nice Chanukah menorah, as nice as you can. Nobody has to go get pure gold if you can't afford it. But you do as nice as you can. And that's Zeh Keli V'anveihu Yisnoah L'fanai b'mitzvos. There's another din of that is actually a din that Reb Zera came and he said, and that is that there's a Hiddur Mitzvah. How much do you have to pay for a Hiddur Mitzvah? A Hiddur Mitzvah means something a little bit different, not just beautification, although that may be included. What it means is doing the mitzvah a little bit better. Example of the Shulchan Aruch itself is, let's say an esrog has to be the size of a beitza. That's the minimum size of an esrog. That's how we pass it, the size of an egg. According to the Chazon Ish, that means 2 eggs. But okay, that's the minimum size of an esrog. So let's say you get one that's mitzvah. So for a little bit more money, you can get one that's a little bit bigger. That's the example of Hiddur in the Shulchan Aruch. Why is it better? Because you leave it in the sun and the heat and a chalabayit, but before you know it, it's less than it's kometz. And before you know it, it's less than a beitza. So for that, that's called a hiddur. To get a little bit bigger is a hiddur. It's not just about beauty if you're Mehudar in the Halachos. So this comes from Reb Zera in the Gemara, starts in the Yerushalmi, the Bavli. It says when it comes to a hiddur, you should pay an extra third for a hiddur. That's what people should do. Pay an extra third. Not to say you're not yotzei with the other, with paying the down price, but you should try to pay an extra third. So what does that mean? That's before beautifying the mitzvah. That's a different story. What is this third? The third is very simple. You see a very a kosher Arba Minim on the table, and let's say that costs 100 shekel. I don't know what they cost. Well, let's say it costs 100 shekel. So now you say, should I go for the more Mahadran one, for the olive? This is kosher, but should I go for the olive? So you can have an attitude to say, look, kosher is kosher. Who made this stuff? Like well, since when do I have to do everything the best? I'm not a gvir. So this is kosher, 100 shekel, I'll buy it. So here's the halacha. Reb Zera, no, you should be mosifin a shlish for the hiddur. So you add on 1/3, and that's what you should buy. So you can always buy more. You could always pay more, but if that's a halachic recommendation to go 1 extra shlish, particularly by lulav and esrog, because it says Hiddur. Even though this is true, let's say you're going to buy a pair of tefillin, you can see what the basics are, and then go 1/3 higher. Not as much, not going so much by what you could afford, but more by what the actual value of kosher is, and then after that 1/3 Mehudar. So now, if you say, let's just do the math for a second together. If you see 100 shekel set outside and you want to buy it, now you say, okay, that's 100 shekel. I could be yotzei to so now I want to add 1/3. So what do you get to? Why 150? Explain. Because so here's a shiloh of the Gemara. Do you go melgav or do you go melbar? If you go melgav, so you would just say, no, you take 100, you divide it up into whatever it is, 35 shekel are the thirds, and you add another 35 shekel. Or do you say, as Rabbi Yisrael says, the maskana of the Gemara is the milavar. Milavar means from the outside, which is interesting cheshbon. So you'll say, well, I want it to cost altogether 1/3 more. So your 100 turns into 150. So 150 is the right amount to spend. And here's where to get you. The next class up is 200. but that's the halacha of mosifin shlish. Hiddur Shulchan Aruch Tov Reish Nun Vav. The whole siman about how you have to add a shlish lehiddur mitzvah, any hiddur mitzvah. But this is really the time to be Mehudar in this Hiddur Mitzvah.